This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome all our loyal listeners to KLEANRadio.com, listening on KFWB News Talk 980, our flagship station, and Extreme Talk XM Channel 165, and also the people listening worldwide at KLEANRadio.com. I'm Judah. Andrew's in upstate New York right now, I believe. Andrew, where are you at? Andrew, where are you?
New York City.
New York. Oh, you're
Hi,
in New York
Andrew.
City. And I'm also in the studio tonight with the
Jen,
lovely
how
and
are you?
talented Jennifer, Easy on the Eyes, Gimenez.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
To everybody out there, by the way, that doesn't know who Jennifer is, she auditioned when she was 10 for the role of the lead singer of Menudo, and they said no.
You're a brat.
And she's Erica Estrada's third cousin. No, I'm just joking. No, you're not.
jerk.
She's the star of tons of shows like The Housewives and Rehab and Celebrity Rehab and Sober House, Cholo's Gone Wild,
Blow
and The Sweetest Thing. And Andrew's also the star of many things, but we can't talk about those movies, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Hi, Jen. How are you doing?
I'm good. Long time no
Good to
talk or
see you.
see.
Yeah, I'll be back in L.A. tomorrow. I'm in New York City tonight,
Cool.
and I'm anxious to get back.
So I saw a couple movies this weekend, and I want to get both of your opinions on this. We have an amazing show tonight. To everybody out there that's listening, we're not like a preachy show. We're not here to tell you not to use drugs, not to drink. We're not that type of people. We're just saying if you decide to stop, there's an amazing life afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair to say?
I think it's very fair to say. We're not here to diagnose other people, although that's what we do for a living. But, we're here to carry the message and be an example. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we get to do. We get to plant seeds.
Okay, so let me ask you guys a question. I just saw the past 2 weeks, and I'm not going to say who I saw them with because whatever. I saw the movie called Magic Mike. And
Every hot gay man was
Yeah.
at the movie theaters when I went there, and
That's-
every lady was
Yeah.
there. How? And I was like, I feel sorry for if any straight guy would ever go. And here you are saying
Yeah.
publicly that you
yeah,
went
you
to
could
Magic
blame
Mike.
it's Andrew's fault. I actually
Don't
went to see the movie.
Ever
So thank
say
you,
that
Andrew.
again.
I sent him on a dare.
Yeah, he did. And I also saw the movie Savages. And the point, and I just want to make sure, this isn't a preachy thing. Listen, I love movies. I'm not a movie snob. I watched Die Hard 4 the other night for the 100th time. But these two movies had a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of sex, a lot of, and is it me getting old, or is the way they're portraying movies to youths and all about drugs being sort of remember in the 80s we would see movies like Less Than Zero, and you didn't walk away from that movie afterwards going, I want to use coke.
I honestly get the cringe when I watch till this day Less Than Zero. I was in a movie Blow, and I
Right.
was actually sober when I shot Blow. And we had to snort cocaine, which is really milk thistle for your liver at the time. And, I think that it's a movie, Judah. Like,
Right.
you are getting a little old. It is a movie. I think it is, some movies don't need to necessarily portray alcohol and show so much alcohol in them, but,
No, I'm not. I don't have a problem with the portrayal in them. Listen, you want to drink in a movie, that's not my issue. The issue is maybe that is my issue. But has something changed where at the end of the movie, you don't see the downside as much?
You don't.
That's what I'm asking.
I got to be honest with you. I'm sorry. I'm like trying to answer all these questions here. Is that I left the movie theater with my girlfriend Brandy, and I was like, so what does that mean, that they're all drug addicts and going to end up having to go to rehab in
Right.
Magic Mike? There was no closure to that, and
Right.
it did just leave me disturbed.
That's Andrew. Am I getting old? Or am I a little off on this?
I think you have a multitude of problems, Judah,
But
but you're doing well. You're doing well tonight. So.
But have movies changed, Andrew? That's the question. not how am I doing?
No, I don't think movies have changed. I mean, I think the 70s, there were much more graphic movies in some ways. I think they were certainly more shocking to the general public than the movies are now. I think the problem is that we've all become desensitized to the media in general and to drug and alcohol use. And, and also, but you got to remember, every message doesn't have to occur in every movie. And some movies are about just the process of adolescence, and it doesn't show later consequences. And I would hate in any way to censor any artistic medium from being able to display whatever content they wanted. It's the message of what happens after people abuse drugs for many years important, certainly, but that message doesn't have to be carried in every single movie.
It's an astute point you make, Andrew Spanswick.
Yes.
Maybe they were just bad movies.
And
that was part of the problem. I just
was-
didn't like the movies.
I want to work with Soderbergh.
Yeah.
I actually know him.
That's-
I don't want to badmouth him. I just think the ending and that movie, like,
Yeah,
he's
let's just
done
ruin the
such
ending for
better-
everybody there listening that
he's
hasn't
done
seen the movie. No, I'm
better
joking.
movies in his life. I just felt like
Yeah.
it was like kind of all like meshed up at the end. Now, however, reality shows, they glorify alcohol on a level where not necessarily doesn't need to be needed so, or used so extremely, but I guess like to make great TV these days, they're doing that. One who has done some
I don't really
reality
watch
shows.
enough. I don't. Right. So, are you talking about the reality shows like Jersey Shore, or are you talking?
Yeah,
About,
I mean,
you're not
like,
talking
I'll
about obviously
never
like
forget-
Celebrity Rehab.
No, but they show it too, and they show what happens at the end. You
Right.
know what I mean, and what happens afterwards. And they're also showing, because these people, these brave, courageous people, have put themselves in front of millions of people to watch. Some of them have died.
Right.
And that is the consequences of using and drinking. I think I'll never forget the first time I watched Jersey Shore was 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago when I was with my little cousin who was a teenager. She still is a teenager, and she was like, fist bump, kill the, hit the bitch, or you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, oh my
I'm not sure
God.
if you just got dumped, by the way, but
Ooh,
you might have.
sorry. Dumped. I've been dumped many times. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But like, and I'm like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? And I was like mortified that she was watching people having threesomes, and like, and I was like repulsed that is what the youth is watching today.
Okay, now everybody listening to us thinks we're a bunch of old people that hate the. But I think, Andrew, your point is actually very valid. That the '70s were far worse, right?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Panic in Needle Park. That was a much more graphic.
Yeah, that was
movie.
pretty
People
graphic.
Actively shooting up, and but there's been all sorts of movies like that. Drugstore Cowboy, Train Spotting.
Yeah.
I mean, they go on and on.
Yeah.
I just think that what Clean Radio is about is really about getting sober. People have reached that point post sort of the glamour of using, and have gotten into the place where addiction has become a serious problem for them. And then we're there to help people, and we're here to take their calls and help them get help if they need it. And also, we're here to offer advice about how to be sober and how good life can be once you are sober.
Very true. And by the way, let's give out that call number. The number here, by the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio Live. That's Clean with a K. The number here is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. One more time, that's 888-539-2980. We know a lot of people out there. This is one of the hardest things to actually talk about, is addiction and getting help. But we do have an amazing guest in the studio tonight. By the way, if you just tuned in, again, you're listening to Clean Radio Live. On the phone is my co-host, Andrew Spanswick, and my co-host is sitting right across from me, the lovely and talented Jennifer Gimenez. Jennifer Easy on the Eyes Gimenez. And that was an accident. But let's welcome to the studio tonight the amazingly talented, one of my favorite women in the world. And to everybody out there, that's listening all across America and Canada and everywhere on cleanradio.com, you have to listen to this woman's message. She has an amazing best-selling book. It's called Uppercut. Let's welcome back into the studio the bodacious Carrie White.
Yay. Thank you.
Hi, Carrie.
Welcome to
Hey.
Clean Radio, Carrie.
So excited to be clean.
Andrew, welcome, Carrie.
Hey.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, welcome. How are you doing, Carrie? Good to see you.
Thank you. Can you see
I'm
me?
watching you on the video stream.
Oh.
So.
Oh, cool. Okay. Oh,
He's
there
actually
we are.
watching me on the video stream. He's just lying.
Keeping you in line. Yeah, I'm with y'all on the movie business.
Yeah.
It's just it's pretty GP where it used to be rated R at least, Needle Park and those other films.
What does GP stand for?
PG.
Oh, PG.
Oh, PG.
Yeah.
I'm dyslexic.
You really have to throw catch everyone.
No, I didn't know what it
everything.
meant. I thought it was like some
Jennifer
hip term that I
Easy and
was
with
missing out.
GP,
I thought
like-
GP was a new term, like general practitioner of movies. Anyways, Carrie, sorry, go on. So,
Well,
I don't know which is worse, your dyslexia or yours just retardation.
Andrew, how do you not punch him? Because I feel like punching him sometimes. Not that I'm an abusive
okay, but
person,
Jennifer, again, easy eyes. Easy on the eyes. This is about Carrie. So let's talk a little bit about. Your book is out called, and it's in paperback now yet.
no, not yet.
Not yet, but
yet.
it's
we're
called
we're
Uppercut.
still moving along with the hardcover, which is very exciting because the hardcover is so beautiful with 60 color photographs that when the paperback comes out, they'll just be black and white. But anyway, I wanted to say something about the movies and the contrast with television today. Great television, Jennifer? No, I mean, I find all these shows so backstabbing, so rude. If they're not alcoholics, these people, they have the worst traits of alcoholism that they are really representing to teenagers and little girls, saying, oh no, the way to treat somebody is to talk behind their back, and the competition is ugly. It's not like I just think it's so hateful, all these shows.
I agree. And also people are applauding these young people on certain shows like the Jersey Shores. Like people are giving them much more millions of dollars in order, and they become successful for being who they are. And look, I get it. There's certain genres and there's people need to fill those slots, but you can also carry a good message
no pun
too.
intended.
But I think again, to Andrew's point is, and I think Andrew, is it safe to say that you're going to say, listen, we're not a show about, but Andrew, is it safe to say people are watching it?
Yeah, I think that Carrie's right, that there's sort of this voyeurism that first started with on PBS. Actually, I can't remember the name of the show, but there was a show in the 70s where they followed a family.
Yeah. It was by an amazing director, and they've done it years after. It's like 7 years, and every 7 years they film them.
Right. So they took the voyeuristic aspect of documentary film and they've turned it into an exploitative genre of sort of using people as train wrecks. And the fact that people...
why train wrecks, though, Andrew? Why not upgrade? Why not give examples of people getting hip and smart and interested?
I just think, what did P.T. Barnum say? Never overestimate the intelligence of the average American.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
That's very true.
I have to tell you, like, I've been in pitch meetings for other shows and stuff, and with my agent, and the networks don't want that on. They don't, and that's the sad thing.
If you look at Jerry Springer in daytime TV,
I blame him for everything.
Evening.
It's all his fault.
The whole genre of daytime TV has moved to the evening, and I don't know why that is, but it obviously is supported by ratings and advertisers. So,
but a perfect example. Remember there was that show, Where Are They Now? It was the VH1 show. And I remember they would do it on tons of bands, and usually they were the saddest stories, and they would give each band. And I remember they did one on Corey Hart. Remember the guy that had, Never Surrender and I Wear My Sunglasses at Night? And they're like, where is Corey Hart? And he's like living on the beach with his wife, very successful, and living a great life. It was 30 seconds. Everybody else was like, drug addict in rehab. That was like 8 minutes. But Corey Hart, who I was like, wow, that's an amazing story. They dedicated like 30 seconds to the guy doing well because everybody wants to see.
Because people are not taught about disappointment and expanding their lives after and in episodes of, after you've had huge success. I think that's one of the great things about recovery is that we're taught there's a big difference between a successful life and being able to face life successessly.
But let's talk about that quickly. How long you're sober? You're sober almost longer
years.
than a long time.
Longer than Bill Wilson, no.
28
years. I just celebrated 28 years, Cinco de Mayo.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, which is absolutely
an example.
Yeah. But so you're sober 28 years, and in that 28 years, people, you got to get her book because you got to see the stories beforehand. But to me, the coolest thing is what you've done in that past 28 years.
Thank you.
And obviously, a lot of it's culminated by this book.
Yes, this book has been 28 years in the process. Well, actually, I started writing it in 1989. I got sober in 1984. And I knew I had a story to tell only because I was alive.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was like, I went, I think there's something here I can pass on. And the fact that I could stay sober for 24 hours when I didn't think I could stay sober for 24 seconds. I was in awe of what recovery had done so generously for me and put me back together again. And I really feel my book is about the impossible,
So 28 and change ago, what did you look like? Because if people, I want you to look at Carrie White now. She's this beautiful woman, an amazingly talented lady who's just very successful.
Here's
what
a
did you look like?
Here's a snapshot.
What did you look like the day before you got sober?
The day before I got sober, I had about 6 greasy hairs that were popping out of the top of my head. What teeth that were left in my mouth looked like they were made out of wood. And I was about 86 pounds.
Wow.
And I came through 6 hospitals, and I used waiting for a ride to the recovery house because, well, I had 28 minutes. And they did not want to even keep me in the recovery house because they thought I needed to be back in a hospital again. I was such a threat of a human being. And believe me, they just nurtured me and patted me. You know, we say it's the kindness and the support of random acts in strangers, and it is just a miracle that that I can put a sentence together. You know what I mean?
Right.
That my shoes match. I mean, it's just it seems impossible.
By the way, Liz, if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio Live. That's KLEAN with a K. You might be listening to us on KFWB News Talk 980, our flagship station, Extreme Talk XM Channel 165. And across, something's
What
off
is
with
wrong with you?
Across the world.
With a K. Across with a K.
Across with a K. That doesn't sound good.
And our
also
KLEANradio.com.
KLEANradio.com. You might be watching us, and let's say hi to all of Jen and Carrie Nation out there. And I'm on the phone. Obviously, in the studio with me tonight is Jennifer Easy on the Eyes Gimenez. On the phone in New York is Andrew. Hotness Spanswick. Hey, Andrew. And Carrie. And Carrie White.
I have to say really quick, I'm sorry. I
want to give the call numbers first.
I know. Okay, go ahead.
Can you do that? You want? Okay, I'll do that. It's 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. Give us a call with any questions, anything you want to talk about. Jennifer, go.
I think you said something that literally is one of my mottos, and it's one of my sayings, like, to tell the story and that you're able to tell a story. Like, I really believe from doing those raunchy reality shows that I've learned that I have a story to tell, and not only do I have a story to tell, but we all over the world have a story to tell, and it's up to us how we want to tell it. And by the grace of God, I've got the lucky stick that I'm sober today. And yes, the acts of kindness and the impossible. I mean, literally, the impossible was done, and that miracles do exist, but that we all have a story to tell, and
We're
it's
all
beautiful.
Good for one book.
Yeah.
And so. You wrote this, so you got sober. You paint this. I mean, that's not a pretty picture. You're 86 pounds. You got half a tooth, and you got 6 greasy hairs.
Yeah.
And what to people out there listening, what happened that you got?
There's some slogans that still are very important to me today, and one was, "You never have to do this again." Once you are available to recovery, I'm sure I have another using, out there, but I don't know that I have another recovery, and that's what I protect and serve today is really my sobriety. And if 10 people tell you got a tail, you better turn around and check your ass. And, I came in so defensive. So my life was all about blame everyone, admit nothing. If nobody moves, nobody gets hurt. And it started like getting softened up, all those walls, and all that investment into drugs and alcohol. Of course, nobody wants to let it go. I wanted it to work. I'm also a child of 2 alcoholics, and I'm a firm believer you don't plant 2 peaches and get a pineapple. So I believe that it's a cellular illness, like some people have lung cancer runs in their family, or heart disease, or tuberculosis, or cancer. Absolutely, alcoholism runs in my family, and I really wanted to create a book that would let people know how it develops, the progress of the illness, the inheritance for me of this illness, but that it's not a moral issue, and it's not a shame-based recovery, and that we are here to help anyone that wants help, and that we are the only ones that can make that decision. And it's not about to live or to die. I mean, it's not about to party or not to party. It's about to live or to die.
Well,
and
you raise a very interesting question, Andrew. You have, so basically, Carrie's saying, it's hereditary, and it's to people out there that are just listening. Andrew's been in the business of helping people for the better part of 30 years. and he's only 10. What if you see people, like Carrie explained, if you see a child come from 2 active alcoholics or 2, is there anything you could do to prevent something, or is it just that's what's going to happen is what's going to happen?
Well, we don't know that that's what's going to happen. We do know that there's a greater likelihood, significantly greater likelihood, if both parents are alcoholic, that the child will be alcoholic. But, it's really about education, and it's about, letting people know the risks that they're exposed to through their genetic profile. But also, these risks apply to everyone, and we're seeing more and more people now whose parents weren't addicted and don't necessarily have a gene for addiction per se, but what I tend to see is there's more of what I call a threshold. And a good example of this is that with schizophrenia, for example, which is, we don't really even know how schizophrenia is, where it comes from. A lot of people think it's genetic. A lot of people think it's a virus. Some people think it's a naturally occurring disease, and some people where, and I don't want to get too technical, but an epigenetic response. So there's genetic responses and then environmentally induced epigenetic responses. But what happens is if you take a bunch of 18-year-olds and send them to Vietnam, for example, a high percentage of them, much higher than if they didn't go to Vietnam, will come back with some sort of psychosis or a form of schizophrenia. So I think the environment does play a lot in it. And the types of behaviors that people do and the toxins that they expose themselves to as they're developing, especially in adolescence, can wire the brain and program the brain and expose the brain to the process and disease of alcoholism. And I think we're seeing more and more of severe addictions because of the types of toxins and substances that exist out there. Alcohol is bad. It's terrible in a lot of ways, but we're seeing such a rash of everything from crystal meth through Adderall, and we see benzodiazepines like Xanax everywhere and Ambien, and we're seeing tons and tons of opiates, oxycodone, hydrocodone, Vicodin. Mom and dad go to the dentist for a root canal. They get 20 Vicodin, and they take 1 or 2 because they don't have a problem. Next thing you know, the kids out there are taking the rest of the bottle and then buying them over the internet.
And can't anybody get addicted to these things, these chemical things? Aren't they? I feel like, what you're saying, these drugs are so available.
Anybody that takes a certain level of a substance for a certain amount of time will develop an addiction for the most part. Now, there are transient users, and we see this more often in, say, binge drinking in college, where a bunch of guys will join a frat, and the vast majority of them will binge drink while they're in that frat during college, and then they'll grow out of drinking. But a good percentage will be stuck with, alcoholism or other drug addiction.
Andrew, I have a question.
This is Jennifer Gimenez, yes.
I'm sorry. Did I interrupt?
No.
I have a question. You were talking about Vietnam, and there's all these cases that have come up because of Vietnam. But are you starting to see a lot of cases? Because I'm getting a lot of emails. I'm seeing a lot of people actually at KLEAN coming in, or like coming to me through emails and asking me about the post-traumatic stress disorder of the Gulf, and what happened out there. Are you starting to see a lot of people come up to that? I know, because I know somebody who I love dearly that goes to the VA, and there's a lot of people that are actually hooked on meds, hooked on, drugs because of the war that just happened.
Yeah, I mean, we've been taught in America to try to separate everything out, that, a mental health disorder is different than addiction. And that just isn't the case. And post-traumatic stress disorder is actually an anxiety disorder brought on by some exposure to trauma. And that's most often treated with anti-anxiety agents to get people stable enough to respond to therapy. Unfortunately, most of those anti-anxiety agents are addicting. They're benzodiazepines like Valium, Xanax. And people in the military are given a lot of Adderall. So they're already set up and primed to become addicted to benzodiazepines or tranquilizers.
And were they always? Did they always after? I mean, is this common or new medicine where they give our military servicemen so many drugs after war? I mean, was this?
They're just
during
different
war,
drugs. I mean,
during war, after war.
In World War II, the Japanese synthesized methamphetamine, and they gave it to the Germans. And for 72 hours, you had the German military high on crystal meth and going across Germany and France and just killing everybody they could in Poland. So, the use of substances to aid people in the military has been going on for a long, long time, and pilots have used it to stay awake for
baseball players, right? They used to call them greenies. Baseball players for years used amphetamines.
Nothing new. I mean, I was with a bunch of Vietnam vets actually up in Washington State a couple weeks ago, and they were telling me about the drugs that they were getting, and it was just shocking. I mean, they control everything from, and I don't want to be gross about this, but from your bowel movements to when you sleep to everything. Everything is controlled through, they put stuff in the food so that, when you go out and you're on patrol, you don't have to go to the bathroom. So,
by the way, if you just tuned in, sorry, Andrew, you're listening. We're going to have to go to a break in a second. You just tuned in. You're listening to Clean Radio Live. That's Clean with a K. The number here is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. You might be listening to us on News Talk 980, our flagship station, KFWB, also Extreme Talk, channel 165. I want some calls after the break. And to talk about this, because I also want to talk about the stuff that Carrie White, who's our guest tonight. We're in the studio with Jennifer on the Gimenez, Andrew's in New York, and I want to talk about, because you've had this amazing life of, as we go to break, you're a woman that's helped so many people, and so many women I know are listening to you tonight, and I want to hear part of that story. So we'll be back. The discussion continues at cleanradio.com.
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? Clean Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to Clean Treatment Center, that's clean with a K, cleantreatmentcenter.com.
Welcome back to Clean Radio. And if you just tuned in, you might sound like, I don't know what that might have sounded like, but Jennifer was asking, we're in the studio time with the amazing Carrie White, and Jennifer was asking Carrie White how she manages to still look so hot.
No, let me do it, right? Because you do it all wrong, and you're like dyslexic tonight.
Yes.
I said, how do you manage to stay so young and hot? That's what I said.
It's the arrested development.
Right.
Heroin will keep you out of the sun, but I don't recommend it for a beauty product.
Yeah, but it catches up to you afterward.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so we're back. Let's get back to your book, Uppercut. It's an amazing book.
And I want to contribute to the idea of today and the contrast. Just the fact that there is a clean radio.
Yeah.
In the 70s, let alone the 80s, it was just starting, to get some recognition. But in the 70s, there weren't gossip magazines. You did not get to see your favorite movie star coming out of their 19th rehab. The awareness of recovery was not even a conversation.
Right.
So it's pretty exciting to be able to really open up and talk about it today and not have the stigma of what an alcoholic used to be. And thank you forever, Betty Ford, for bringing it into an equal opportunity disease. And how grateful I am that she brought that topside and had the courage. I'm sure she's part of my courage to write a kind of honest book that I did. And I know that I've helped people who have mothers that are alcoholics, because I just ended up recreating the scene of the crime. I mean, I came from a very disastrous alcoholic mother home, and then I feel like I surpassed her in my own illness progression by adding what wasn't so readily available to my mother, all the cocaine and all the diet pills and the speed. And I feel there is an epidemic. Everybody's making drugs in garages, and it wasn't this way. I mean, pot isn't the same. Drugs aren't the same. And the other the other particular party that I feel is unconscious about this are the heavy doses that are recommended when somebody is given OxyContin for a toothache or something. It's like I had a surgery about 4 years ago, and if I would have used what they gave me as directed, you'd have another speaker here tonight.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
I mean, they really are too free, or they don't. I don't know.
I agree with you. You know, I was on CNN. I do a lot of CNN and HLN. I was on with Dr. Drew when Whitney died, and he was like, you know, do you know that those pharmacies that were giving out medication to her? And I was like, yeah, I used to go to them, and I said, you know, it's doctors. Like last year, I went to the doctors, and I was like, you know, I'm having anxiety problems, and you know, my back, I have a really bad back, and he was like gonna write me up narcotics. I'm like, hi, I'm in treatment. I told you I was in recovery, and then he was still writing, and he was like, just take them at night, you'll sleep well. And I was like, yo, I'm the voice of recovery, like on TV sometimes. Like, no, I can't. And like, we got in a fight. And I was like, Dr. Drew, like your peers, because he was like, my peers don't do that. And I'm like, your peers, if you want to put your name on the line, go ahead.
Jennifer, I could get a morphine drip if I told the doctor.
I know.
But
I mean, I can go to the hospital
Andrew,
today.
and I'm gonna agree with Andrew on this, by the way, because the recollection is an amazing thing. And listen, I wasn't around in the 60s and the 70s. Well, I was around in 76, but I was a day old. But the way people make the 60s sounds was there was so much free love and free drugs that, do you think it's just because then it was free and everybody gave it, and now is there a major difference? Are more people using drugs?
It's not that it was free in terms of cost or price. It was that there was a change in the moral structure of how people viewed sexuality, and a lot of sexuality and freedom, and a lot of that came from women's rights, and I think most of it was really spurred on by the birth control pill, where all of a sudden women were separated from having to reproduce or having a clear risk of reproducing possibly if they had sex, if they had promiscuous sex or random sex with people for recreation. That change, freeing women from reproduction, created a real cultural shift. And with that freedom from sexual repression, also, people thought that there should be a freeing from the repression of what people should do in terms of other types of behavior, drug taking and whatnot.
So we're saying thank God for birth control.
You know,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, Jennifer.
I have to say that's amazing. I've never heard that angle, and that's just insane. That's really what happened. Just to clarify and make quick note, because I do work with Dr. Drew, he was not verifying, he wasn't justifying for those other his peers, but he was saying, you know, my peers don't do that until we got in this discussion, and that, you know, he's not that doctor, is all I wanted to say.
Although there was a news story about him this week. We won't talk about that.
We will not talk about that.
And just for justification.
There's stories about me all the time, like.
Yes, Carrie.
And just for justification, I had 5 children, and I didn't do drugs because there were birth control pills around.
Right.
In fact.
So let's get to that, because you have...
I mean, addiction has existed, obviously, well before the birth control.
Right.
The summer of love and, you know, the change in culture. There's definitely...
I would have smashed him up and snorted him, Andrew.
But that's actually a really good point, what Andrew's saying, is do you think... I mean, listen, obviously with women in the 50s and the 40s, there were movies like The Days of Wine and Roses, which showed alcoholism in women. But was drug addiction...
Well, the 50s was racked by tranquilizers and speed.
Right.
So, and that continued again in the 70s as the 60s generation got older. So there's, the pattern and use of drugs wane and fall, but they've always been there. They've been there since the beginning of time. Yeah. And they'll continue to be there. It's something.
Well, it is ancient. It's an ancient disease, and it's been here long before us and long after us.
The 20s was heroin and coke, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Freud was using coke actively in the 20s, and the Roaring 20s had a lot of cocaine.
Well, here's a fashion tip for you.
Had morphine and cocaine in them. So Coca-Cola.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what's your fashion point?
Fashion point.
Yes, Carrie White.
You know nylons that have a seam down the back, and then they have kind of a little expanding border? That supposedly was created so women could shoot morphine in the back of their ankle. And
And
France.
So did
Had I known.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio Live. That's KLEAN with a K. You might be listening to us on News Talk, News Talk 980, also Extreme Talk, XM Channel 165. I'm having a problem talking tonight. And
Yes,
on
you
the
are.
World Wide Web at KLEANradio.com. We're in the studio tonight with, we have actually a very lively discussion. It's going in many different ways, but we're in the studio tonight with acclaimed author, acclaimed woman, and Carrie White, who's written this book called Uppercut. And we were talking about this before the show, and there's a couple things I really would like to get into. You just mentioned that you have 5 children.
Yes.
You're sober 28 years. You've had this incredible career, and please, people, go out there and buy the book. The people you've cut, that you've just done this amazing thing. But my biggest thing that I see all the time is you help so many women. And I mean, just constantly, women are just walking up to you saying, "Can you help lead my? Can you help show me how to do this?"
I want to say that our program has a promise that tells us we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it, and that's because we get our transformation and our experience becomes hope for someone else, and our worst nightmares and our most horrible experiences we can share with someone so they don't feel alone, and also hopefully help someone else prevent it. But when I think about all my life and anything that I regret, it is certainly looking into my children's eyes and not being able to be present for them during just the worst possible time, their childhood. It's 6 or 7 years out of my life, but it's their whole childhood, that I
Right.
was not present and so neglectful, and took my kids to the dealers and just packed them up in corners. You okay? Go to sleep, so I could get high. And I mean, my book is not all autographs and sunglasses, folks. I just want you to know the first 15 pages are rough, but if I live through it, you can read through it.
But I think it's so important what you're saying right now, because Jennifer is also this beautiful young lady who's got, almost 6 years sober. And
Almost, dude. I have 6.5.
6.5. I'm
Dude,
sorry.
clear on it.
Sorry. And but I think it's also important to talk about, because I think one of the things that's so hard for people out there is when they want to stop. It's
And
like
can't.
And it's more hard for women, by the way. It's a
Espe-
fact that
especially
women can't.
with, especially with children, and it's like when the day you get sober, you're looking at the things that are actual reality, and you're going, oh my God.
And you almost don't want to get sober
Right.
because you don't want to look at that.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
That's-
I was so busy anesthetizing. I didn't want to think about yesterday, let alone today.
Yeah.
But I treat my own heart by helping sober young ladies be sober mothers, and
Right.
that I can contribute to any of that, or that sobriety can contribute to the mass of alcoholic women that just need to know that it's okay. It's okay. None of us get here overnight. We don't get well overnight. One day of not carrying the drink is carrying the message, and it's an improvement, and it's better, and it is helpful to just know that that it's possible.
Yeah.
It's so deep. It's so deep, and it's so important to be sober if you're an alcoholic. Anybody, but a mother, a woman.
I think it's
so
wonderful.
exciting, and you get so grateful, and everything becomes so important. Just making a lunch.
And real.
Woo!
Yeah, no, it is very real, and that's the thing is like there's, on my side, and I, because we're all sober, our sobrieties are our life in sobriety is different at times, and for a lot of people, they go out. A lot of people do go out and they do relapse. And, that doesn't necessarily isn't a lot of people, everyone's story, but it is some of our stories. And, I know that people want to give up at times, when they're sober.
Okay, we actually have a really interesting call. Let's go to line 1. We have John from Sherman Oaks, California. He's a physician who used to over-prescribe.
Ooh, John.
Welcome to KLEAN Radio, John.
Hi, John. Great.
Well, I really appreciate the show. Listen, at one time I was very much part of the problem rather than part of the solution.
That's very courageous
Yeah.
that you're calling, and amazing that you're bringing this up.
So what was what happened?
Well, I started noticing that I was prescribing massive amounts of hypertension medicine. And then I just was challenged by a buddy of mine, a colleague that's a member of the American Society of Addiction Medicine, and another thing called the California Society of Addiction Medicine. He said, why don't you do what's called an hepatic panel? Why don't you check out their livers and see where what their livers look like before you start prescribing hypertensives? And I was like, cool. So I started looking at livers and found out that statistically about 10% of my patients were alcoholics. So I asked them to just think about stopping their consumption of alcohol, and the hypertension away, vanished. So, and then the other thing that really convicted me, you guys were talking about people with anxiety issues, and we put them on anxiolytics, and these anxiety drugs actually cause the very problem they're designed to treat. So, I'm getting better. I'm not where I should be.
Andrew,
And I had a question for the doctor. I heard it, and this was anecdotal, so I was wondering what comment you could make about methamphetamine just releasing so much dopamine in the nucleus accumbens that maybe people with no predisposition genetically could actually become addicts overnight. And I'll hang up the phone, and I want to listen to that comment. Really love the show. Thank you.
thanks for the call, John.
Thank you
Andrew,
so
you want
much.
to take that, please?
Yeah, I think that we're in a strange time in some ways. As much as I have some disdain for the pharmaceutical companies, and certainly, some of the people have been watching the news lately. There's been some multi-million, I think even billion-dollar judgments now against Pfizer and GlaxoSmithKline, and so there's obviously a problem with corporate pharmaceutical companies designing and marketing drugs for multiple uses to maximize their profits. At the same time, I'm very thankful for the fact that scientists have been hired in these companies to design drugs to help people with mental illness. And having worked in a lot of acute care psychiatric hospitals, not just programs for addiction, I know that there is a huge amount of mental health issues that go well beyond just addiction that need to be researched more, and more medications have to be developed for it.
Right.
Situations like anxiety disorders, a lot of these drugs weren't created to be used long term. They were created, and even antidepressants like SSRI antidepressants were not created to be used for your entire life. They were created to be used to create a temporary window in which then other therapeutic interventions could be used, and the person would be stable enough and relieved from the symptoms of their anxiety or depression to be able to receive the information from the therapy. And I think that, it's important that we realize that if someone has suicidal thoughts or if somebody is so anxious that they're not able to function, there are some immediate ways to resolve some of those side effects or some of those symptoms, and they should consult a psychiatrist and a doctor. And I'm not opposed to medication. What I am opposed to is relying on medication in and of itself.
And how about asking someone why they're anxious, why
Right.
their anxiety,
Well,
why
right.
they have
Well,
this
absolutely.
problem?
But what I'm saying is that having worked in acute care psychiatric hospitals, if somebody's depressed and they try to kill themselves and they can't function, they're vegetatively depressed. It's
They're not
amazing the
gonna reach out.
medications we have now that even 30 years ago we didn't have, 20 years ago we didn't have. The side effects of the drugs then were horrible, and now we've got many more tools to use. I think one of the biggest criticisms I have of the AMA is that they haven't restricted the prescribing of psychiatric medications to psychiatrists who are actually trained in psychopharmacology for mental health. And we've placed these very powerful medications in the hands of every general practitioner.
Right. That's actually a great point you're bringing up, because I'm on the phone with my mother the other day. My mother the other day. Excuse me, and she's telling me about this general practitioner that's prescribing anti-anxiety pills.
Mm-hmm.
And what is their license? It's like, I'm not going to go to a gastroenterologist and say, "Can you inspect my arm?" And
we're seeing it now with Suboxone that methadone was fairly controlled and regulated you had to have a special license, still do actually, to dispense methadone.
And
But
again,
now, we have more and more doctors, general practitioners looking for new revenue streams, and they're actually become a business to use Suboxone.
Right.
So, and
Okay.
they're not, they have some training, but believe me, I've seen the training, and it's not really adequate.
Right. How easy? Let me ask you an honest question. By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio Live. That's Clean with a K. Give us a call, 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We're in the studio tonight with the best-selling author, amazing woman. Just, I was going to say best-selling woman, but one of the most amazing women I've ever met. She's helped so many people out there. Her name is Carrie White. We're also in the studio tonight with Jennifer Easy on the Eyes Gimenez, who's got a bunch of projects we're going to talk to you about quickly that are coming up. And I'm on the phone with Andrew Spanswick, proprietor of Clean. And so, you hear a lot of people saying they're doctors of this, doctors of that. They're doctors, doctors of addiction, right?
Right.
What does that entail? Is that like a 1 year?
Well, doctor really doesn't mean much anymore. It
Okay.
used to mean that someone had a PhD or a medical doctorate. There's now all sorts of doctorates. There's PsyDs, which are a type of psychologist that haven't really done a full PhD. The term doctor I don't really take too seriously, honestly, anymore. What I take seriously is really the credentials and the experience behind the different levels of degrees. So if I hear that someone's a medical doctor, I just generally think, okay, I start off, well, they're a general practitioner, and then let's see what else they know. And, I've probably worked closely with about 22 psychiatrists in my career. And I would have to say of the 22 psychiatrists that I've worked with, I would really only say 3 of them I really felt were extremely competent.
And one of them is at Clean Treatment Center, and his name is Dr. Jason Coe.
He's amazing.
Who is the best. He's
And Dr. Coe and I have worked together since 1991, and he's an incredible physician that I think really understands. See, the thing is with medication is it's not all science. There's still, we know very little about how the brain really works still, and we know very little about how these medications work. In fact, I think on a previous show, one of the impressive things about Dr. Coe was that he said that he actually didn't know how the brain worked for the most part, and he didn't really know how all these medications work. But there's an art to understanding how to prescribe medication and how to get the right response to it, and then how to work with a patient therapeutically to get them to a point where they're healthy, and then hopefully off of medication. Some people have organic brain disorders, though, that do require ongoing medication. And one of my pet peeves with AA, and not to criticize AA too much, but is that there are people that do have chronic long-term mental illness that will have to take medication if they hope to stay sober from other drugs, and if they hope to be able to remain stable.
I agree.
and that's definitely, Andrew, and that's definitely okay. But we are running out of time, and I want to get to Carrie.
Thanks
I know you
for
had
bringing
something-
that up, Andrew.
Yeah, I know you had something to say, but I want to talk about something you were talking about before that I think is really cool, and both you and Jennifer could relate and could talk about this. You said your book is being taught in a college in Berkeley.
Yes, they used it for a textbook for writing classes, and it affected a lot of people through recovery. All this conversation with medication, and I just wanted to interject something like the conversation about an alcoholic is the only one that will really, you have to want recovery, and you have to admit that you are an alcoholic. What about the people that are taking all these drugs and requesting all these drugs? They have a responsibility into that to know what they're doing.
Right.
Are they anxious or,
absolutely.
people
Yeah.
who say, I have a sleeping disorder.
Right.
Well, you don't have one all day when you're
I think,
sleeping.
I think the saddest thing...
Carrie, no, let me jump in here, Judy. Carrie's absolutely right that the ultimate responsibility is not the physician. We are not a paternalistic society where adults should
drug
be
addicts
looking
getting it.
to outside people to guide and parent them.
And you're
and I
being
think there
taken
has
advantage
been
of.
Yeah, there's been this extended sort of adolescent thinking and a lack of true development of young adults into true adults, and that return to personal responsibility is important.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the therapeutic part is largely.
And that's how anybody ever
Right.
can recover.
Yeah.
I think the
Period.
biggest thing to think about too, Andrew, and is that if you're most people that really need to be on meds are the people not walking into the doctor saying I need help.
You know what? I don't agree. No, I don't agree with you 100% on that.
I'm not saying
But
it's
also
100.
these people that are dropping dead have like 3 and 4 doctors giving them
Right.
the same
And-
prescription.
Absolutely.
They're
Right.
working the doctor.
Absolutely.
Right.
And also, when you're in recovery, there are people in recovery who are on medication. And I'm not here to judge or criticize. I'm just here to say, if you need medication and you take it from a doctor, I don't believe anyone's to say if you're sober or not.
That
that's
actually
for
was
you to
right.
judge.
That wasn't what I was saying.
No, I know, but I just need to say that because some people are going to question it.
No, what I'm saying is that people out there that are bipolar who sadly stop taking their medicines
Yeah.
quite often
People that
are
need
the
it
one
won't
right.
refuse.
It's very sad. Listen, if anybody out
people
there,
have even more complex disorders like seizure disorders.
Right.
And,
it's horrible. And for,
look, the point, I think, we could argue this all day long or even just make more and more points about it. I think the important message to get out there is that if you notice that you're having a problem of abusing medications or medications are leaving you in a state where you're feeling morally or spiritually bankrupt and your life is out of control and you're in pain and suffering, you need to see professionals that understand both the issues of addiction and understand mental health issues. And the two fields are merging together, and for too long, I believe, they've been separate.
right.
That the psychiatric field has believed that addiction was largely just a symptom of psychiatric illnesses, other psychiatric illnesses like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, mood disorders. And the addiction field has felt that addiction is addiction, and psychiatric disorders have nothing to do with addiction. And I'm glad that we're starting to see everybody come to the same side of the table and have an open discussion about how they can complement each other and use the scientific data and information that's being developed and develop medications and treatment protocols that develop better outcomes.
Okay, Andrew,
I
Carrie
applaud
wanted
you.
to jump in quickly.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you're saying, and it's all fancy. But if you go to a doctor and you say, "I'm an alcoholic. I have alcoholism. Could you prescribe me something?" No, there isn't a pill for alcoholism.
Right.
There's
Right.
so it's another concept, and doctors don't talk
Right,
about
but
alcoholism.
A doctor shouldn't just have a 5-minute visit
Right.
with someone like that. And unfortunately, I think too much that is the case. I think that because of the way that insurance companies and the way that the government has structured reimbursement and programming, unfortunately, doctors only see people for 5 or 15 minutes when it really takes, days.
I know, but I'm just saying alcoholism is not a conversation that's discussed enough by a doctor to a patient. Are you an alcoholic? You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree with you.
I don't
That's why
think that word came up. My mother died in County General Hospital at 54 years old. She was not detoxed or anything. It was obvious she was an alcoholic. And, now today, I just expect more conversation about alcoholism.
Well, we're
because
trying.
It's not a moral issue.
Right.
It's an illness, and it's not treated with, changing seats on the Titanic and taking another drug. It's really abstinence and replacing it with tools for living that is not the solution to grab a drink when you have a feeling and understand it. Just like they say, anxiety. It's like, but what are you anxious about? You just robbed a bank?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think
It's
what
like,
it comes down to is, and I think what we're all saying is, there's tons of help for everybody that needs it. Hopefully, there are doctors out there like John who called in, who are trying to get, who are being honest with themselves and are saying,
honesty.
My way wasn't working. We're also saying that there are doctors out there. Please don't look at people for 5 minutes and say this. You need to be on this.
And there's people that don't need medication.
Right. But if you do need, please, God bless, get on them. Andrew, we're running out of time. Andrew, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Andrew.
All right, guys. Hey, Carrie, thank you so much for coming in. And Jenna, it's great to see you again.
Good to see you, too.
And Judah, I will see you at the airport.
I'll see you at the airport with your...
And I hope you're taking care of my dog.
Yeah, yes, I'm taking care of Kelpie. And let me tell you something. If you ever give me a dog named Kelpie again, I'm going to kill you because everybody walks around going Kelpie, and I'm like, don't ask. It's not my dog.
Kelpie, that's Sophie.
No, Andrew decided a midlife dog crisis, and he got a dog in
that's so
Texas as he was
cute.
driving across
Oh,
America.
I can't wait to meet whoever that
Her. She's beautiful.
Aw.
And Andrew, I'll see you at the airport tomorrow.
Cute.
Carrie, I want to just thank you again. Where could people get Uppercut?
TheCarrieWhite.com. Please check my website. Follow me at Carrie White Hair on Twitter. And I'll be happy to talk to you on Facebook, Carrie White Hairdresser.
And to anybody out there that's struggling, going through a rough time, I beg of you to buy this book. It is awesome. And
I'm ADD and dyslexic, so I wrote it for people who don't read.
Right. And that's also why it took since 1989. The next book will be out in 2029. It was started a week ago. But it really is. And
it's a wild romp. I tell everybody it's like Forrest Gump meets Boogie Nights, so enjoy.
That's sort of a great visual. And Jennifer, you are one of the busiest working women in Hollywood these days. I see you all over, but you also have this movie coming out called
Groom's Cake.
Groom's
Yeah,
Cake,
it's actually going into the festivals, and it's won 2 out of 2 festivals, Best Comedy, and it's going in Philly this week. And I know Anna, who's watching, she actually got tickets to go see it, and Rehab's coming out in September, and the other show that I've been shooting that I'm not allowed to say I'm shooting, but it's all over the internet that I'm shooting it, will come out September, October too.
And I myself will be appearing at the Coffee Bean on Sunset tomorrow. I will also be.
I'll be at Clean tomorrow doing my
I'll be
groups.
also at the Starbucks later on in the day tomorrow. So
You're such a dork.
that's where I'm appearing, and I want to thank all the Jennifer
Chulas, we
Chula
gave you a
Nation.
shout out.
Sorry, and Carrie White, you are a rock star. You'll be
Thank you,
back pretty
sweetheart.
soon.
Thank you so much.
And the discussion
Jennifer,
about all this stuff
Thank you.
congratulations on everything.
Congratulations. I love
continues
you
at
very much. Thank you for what you've
cleanradio.com.
done.
Thank you.
Ladies, that's cleanradio.com. We'll see you next week. Thank you. Marry Carrie next week. Bye-bye.
Oh, Mary.
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? Clean Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to Clean Treatment Center, that's clean with a K, cleantreatmentcenter.com.